72-hour, goddamn, I feel amazing.
You have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown.
Shooters go after Judas. Jesus Christ, if I live life on my knees, ain't no need to do this. Park it in front of Lunas, next to their church's chicken. All you pussies that loses.
Okay, so our first topic of the day is the NBA playoffs. Now, the playoffs have kind of gotten off to it's a different start because there's a lot of good teams in the West, obviously, and there's only I would say 2 or 3 good teams in the East. And Aaron, I don't know what your opinion on is, but I think this is going to be one of the best playoffs.
I would agree with that. You see, the last 3 seasons we've been accustomed to a Cavs-Warriors finals, right. And it's not looking very optimistic for either team. I'd say, Cavs coming off to a slow start. The Warriors, I think they're playing really good without Steph. Then again, they are playing the Spurs, but you got to think if you're a Warriors fan, Kevin Durant's playing well. Especially after coming out of the starting the playoffs and the season looked pretty rough. They lost to the Jazz by like 40 points.
Right.
And I'm gonna start first series I think has been the most interesting is the Pelicans and Blazers series. Now you guys obviously see I have a UK quarter zip on, and so seeing Anthony Davis perform at a high level, I've seen it every year that he's played in the NBA really, and he's just off to a great start. Game 1, 35 points, 14 rebounds, and that's just something that the Pelicans have gotten from him most of the season and most of his career. And you got to think about this too, they're up 2-0 in the series, and they don't have DeMarcus Cousins. And you got a player in Drew Holiday who's been stepping up, playing well, and Rajon Rondo even being in game 2, big 16 points, 2 threes, and he's not much of a three shooter, and he hit a 3 towards the end of the game that put the game on ice, I'd say. And I would say if I'm a Blazers fan, I'd be kind of worried, because especially with the performances McCollum and Lillard have been putting in, it's not been very good. You see, game 1, Lillard 6 of 23, and McCollum 7 of 18, and you got to think those are your 2 best players really besides Nurkic, and that's just they're not performing well.
They're being guarded by 2 of the best guards in the West, defensively.
Yes.
Drew Holiday I think he's a really underrated point guard. I think he'll give you 20 points, 10 assists, and 2 steals a night, and it'll just lock up your best player on offense. And I think Rondo, towards the end of the season, it's just Rondo gets into a playoff.
He's just an experienced guy, and he lives for the playoffs. You saw him last year on the Bulls going up 2-0 against Celtics, and then he ended up getting hurt. That's just him. He's just a big performer, and I think that he's showing that in this series.
Right. So the first thing I want to talk about, the 76ers Heat series, which is kind of interesting because obviously I think it's Philly's year where they kind of have taken maybe the next step. Who knows? Okay. This could be a fluke year. I'm not 100% sure. With Meek Mill being locked up, free Meek, and then you have Ben Simmons, who's arguably one of the best rookies in the league, and he'll give you a triple-double every night.
Yeah.
He's proven that throughout the rest of the season.
I think you can see the growth that this team has put forward. Obviously, adding some big players in Simmons and Embiid being, their 2 full seasons besides Embiid, being out for the playoffs so far.
Right.
But you actually get to see this process that Embiid's been preaching kind of come forth and show oh yeah, they might be the real deal. And I'll tell you, I was watching game 1, and the first half was back and forth. Philly was off to a great start though. Robert Covington, I think he provides, somewhat of a good role-playing type player. He'll hit a few threes, early on or later in the game, and I think
he's
one of those players that you could really use in certain situations.
Yeah, I think he's really good defensively, but the one thing I really liked what they did this season is towards the All-Star break, I think they picked up Ilyasova and Marco Bellinelli, and they just ever since they gone on that 17-game stretch where they were just destroying everybody, even though all the teams weren't great, I still think those 2 guys are giving them. Let's see, Bellinelli in game 2 when they lost, he already had 16 points.
And he had he had 25 game 1, was it?
He had 25 game 1. I think Ilyasova had about, I would say 20. I'm pretty sure. And I just think those 2 acquisitions kind of space the floor like enough to where Ben Simmons could, even with Embiid out, could just go to work.
Yep.
And I think like that just really gives them an advantage is the fact that their best player's not a good three shooter, so they just surround them with a bunch of three shooters. And I think that's really what's kind of putting them over the edge. I don't think they're ready enough to make a finals run, but I think they're kind of there. They just need like one or two more pieces, and I think Markelle Fultz can be that. Which obviously with his mystery injury that happened this year, where his shooting mechanics just like totally fell apart. I'm not 100% sure what happened there, but I think like that this is a really good up and coming team.
I think we'll see that as well. What do you think about the Heat's performance in games 1 and 2?
Game 1, I think it was going to be rough because I know that not a lot of them have had playoff experience. I mean, they've always been like around the 8th seed, but towards the end of the season they just can't pull it off to make it in the playoffs. So I think having Kelly Olynyk and Goran Dragic really helps them. But then again, I mean, you have D Wade, who's like arguably one of the best shooting guards of all time, coming off the bench. Which like in game 2, I think he basically hit the dagger. He was like 11 of 16. He had 6 of 8 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds, 28 points. I mean, that's what you need.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade. He's that guy, and I would even say, I thought recently in between once he left Miami and coming back into Miami, I was kind of questioning his the way his career is going. I could see like, oh, he's going down, and I think this game really kind of convinced me like, oh yeah, he could be back for at least one more big run towards the finals. I would say he played really well, especially after game 1. He didn't play as much. Game 2, he played way more, and I think that's what the Heat need.
Right.
And they kind of see that. Spoelstra and Wade have been together Wade's whole career, really. Even when, he won the finals in 06, won the first ring, Spoelstra was the assistant coach.
Right.
So, they've grown. I'm sure that bond has grown. And, he can see, Spoelstra can see, what Dwayne Wade can do in certain situations. And I think that goes a long way, especially with this team. They're inexperienced, and a lot of these guys are needing to step up. And if someone can't, then Dwayne Wade will.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. But what's your outlook on the playoffs? Like, how do you think this is going to unfold? Because me personally, I'm not too sure on the Cavaliers right now. I mean, a young team that they just don't know how to play defense. It seems like they just get too mad at each other, and they just don't try on defense. I'm not too confident in that.
I think they've had a crazy season, to say the least. You saw how the team started off. They started off. I don't even know what their record was, but
7-8. I
think. It was something like that. And then they went on like an 18 game winning streak or something around there. Yeah, and then they ended up like kind of evening out, and then you started to see the weaknesses of the team that they had. And I've always thought this as well. I hear like stuff about the Spurs, how they've built up a dynasty, and they've had the same players for so long, and they've just been good for. This is their first season that they haven't won 50 games in like 20 years. So it's been there, and they've made the playoffs consecutively, probably longer than we've been alive. So, you see teams like that put together consistently good seasons and good teams, and they've built it off of having guys like Tim Duncan and Tony Parker play for years, and you can just fill guys in and learn from those guys. Like and the Cavs don't have that. You see, they're in a do or die mode. It seems like with Kyrie leaving, that kind of gives younger guys like on the Cavs, I don't know, Jordan Clarkson or even Rodney Hood. They can't learn from Kyrie because he's not on the team anymore, and there's no experience really.
Yes.
And a lot of these guys are in their first experiences with the playoffs.
So who do you think is going to the finals this year? What do you think
finals
the playoffs are like shaping out to be?
I'm thinking after the first round, I can easily see the Pelicans staying strong and going through.
Right.
The Timberwolves, going down 2-0. Yeah, it doesn't look promising. They haven't beaten the Rockets all year.
Right.
So I think the Rockets will push through there. The Jazz are playing the Thunder. I think the Thunder are going to pull through that one. I like the Thunder's chances this year of making a run. Donovan Mitchell, I think he's going to make it hard on the Thunder to roll through because, he's just a playmaker. It's his rookie season. You barely see guys that are rookies come in and make an immediate impact.
Do you think there could be a possibility of a co-rookie of the year this year?
It's definitely difficult because there's so much talent, and you see Simmons and Mitchell, and they're going back and forth with their arguing if Simmons should be eligible, and it's just I think it's the type of thing you want to see in the NBA is guys fight for an award, and sometimes in Rookie of the Year you don't see so many players fight for it. You could make a case of probably 5 to 10 players that could be good enough for it. But continuing on with, who I could see getting to the finals, I think the Warriors are gonna fall. As much as I don't want to hate to say that, but I just feel like they're in a weird like transition season. You know what I'm saying? Like coming off the second championship in 3 seasons last year, KD's first ever. I just think that after all they've done this year, it's just they've been plagued with injuries and plagued with bad games, and I don't think it's going to come down to Steph Curry and KD playing bad. I just think they're just going to I think they'll play well. I just think whoever they play is just going to have the step on them, and I think that's going to be the Rockets. James Harden has fallen to the Warriors twice in the playoffs against the Rockets, and I think this is his time to step past them, and that's kind of something I like to see. You see all these guys are, Harden's fighting, and he was building this team up and building this team up. He's been with them for a few years, and he finally got the team that can compete with the Warriors, and he could even say they're better. Right. So I think the Rockets are going to take the Warriors down. Pelicans will end up finishing the Blazers, and then it'll be the Thunder making it through as well. So I think it'll be a Thunder and Rockets Western Conference final, and semifinal. Yeah, that's what I meant. And I think the Rockets will come out of the West. End up coming out of the West. If not, I think I could easily see the Thunder as well. Playoff P as they call him, Paul George. I always liked Paul George. It was terrible to see his injury in the Olympics, and you could see just it's hard to bounce back from things like that. And look what he's done. He had 8 threes in Game 1. So I think if they can play as a team that way, they can compete against anybody. So.
See, my opinion, I think this is James Harden's year where he finally gets over like that hump.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
So I would think, what year was it? I think it was 2014, 2015, where people thought he should have got the MVP over Steph Curry the first time, and then obviously Steph Curry had an amazing year the next year.
Right.
And then last year with Russell's triple-double, which was a crazy accomplishment, and he did it again this year, which I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. And it's a little situation there. But James Harden, this year, he's finally got the team. Chris Paul, him, Trevor Ariza, Clint Capella, who's been amazing this year.
Yeah.
And he's really turned into like a kind of a Dwight Howard kind of player. And I think him averaging like 30 points a game, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, I think he's finally ready to like take that next step into being like the face of the league once LeBron retires.
Yeah, that's big for players like him, especially coming from all these guys were drafted by the Thunder.
Right.
Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. And I actually saw something recently. It's like, if Harden becomes the MVP, it's like, the Thunder have drafted 3 straight MVPs, basically, in the first round, that is. So I think that he's definitely proved himself this season. I think I would almost say he's had a better season than last year even, and I think that's going to pay off for him in the playoffs. He's played well so far. He dropped 44 points first game. Right. And I think that was a statement for him. A lot of these people are like, all right, let's see what he can do.
Because he hasn't really performed in the playoffs.
Yep.
It's kind of,
yep.
I wouldn't say he choked, but I think he's played like really poor in these rounds.
And he showed that he's about business. Yes. And I think that was big for him.
Even though he did have like a subpar game too, he didn't really hit a lot of shots.
But they have the depth to work around that, and I think that's good for early games. Right. But then working forward towards the next round, they're gonna need him to step up. Yeah. So
I think Russell Westbrook's season, which I don't like to look at it this way, but I know a triple double is like the most insane thing that could ever happen. And the way I look at it, Russell's on a team that has Paul George, Carmelo Anthony on it. And they've only won 48 games, even though the West is stacked. I mean, think about it. They're playing the Jazz. I think the Jazz won the same amount of games they have. And the Jazz have who? Donovan Mitchell?
And they're like in a rebuilding stage, and
Yeah,
just
everybody
they're one of
thought-
those teams that's like, they're getting there, but they just need a few more pieces to be great.
And,
And
Gordon Hayward leaving last year,
Yeah.
that definitely didn't help. And they're still the 5th seed who just beat the Thunder last night. And
Yep.
I think, the Thunder's big three shot, what was it, 0 of 14 over the final few minutes?
I think it's all about working around each other and working together with these three players. You've seen a lot of big threes work well.
Right.
We've seen that with the Heat. They went to 4 straight finals, only winning 2. They probably should have won 3, arguably, against Dallas. And then the last finals they went to, they played the Spurs, and the Spurs were just
Dominant.
That was Kawhi's rise. But I think that the team itself, the team is there, the talent's there, and they just need to find a way to distribute it, I think, because they're just. And I've said that all year. They're going to be whatever. What are they? They're like the 5th seed, 4th seed. And at the time, they were closing on the 7th seed.
Right.
And I was saying, they're going to be the most talented 7th seed
Ever,
yeah. And, I think it's just about putting it all together. You saw Paul George score 36, 38 points. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but, he had 8 threes. And if you can just... And you saw Melo, he had 15 points. Russ had, I think, 24.
Right.
And if you put that together, that's it right there. That's what they need consistently, is for them to perform. Maybe not, one of them dropping almost 40 points, but like kind of having like a 20, 20, 20,
Right.
20 points from all of them. And that's what a big three should be, really, to me. And I think that, Russell, people say, he's selfish, he's a stat stuffer, whatever. I think he just wants to go after it, and I think he wants points on the board,
Right.
and he's going to get it any way he can. If that means stealing rebounds over other players, that's his IQ, I think. I think he's going to pull a rebound down, and he's going to immediately look to set up a play or even go all the way down the court and score.
Right.
And that's just how he is, And if people see it as being selfish or whatever, then they're going to see that. Because, people will find a way to, dismiss the success you have and say you're doing it in a way that's not wanted or not wanted to be seen. You know what I'm saying?
Stat padding, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next topic, I think we're going to talk about is LeBron James and what his future holds, I think, throughout this season and the next season, the rest of his career.
All right.
Yeah, and that'll be after this break.
Player of the month during February, and that people were knocking him for, there was a whole week where there was no basketball played because of the All-Star break. But, you see, he was still player of the month for the next 2 months, and he's just been consistent all year long. So it's like, you can't knock him for being the best player in a month that was shortened, because he's been playing like that all year.
Right.
I think I wouldn't say he would leave Cleveland, but I definitely think he's gonna want change. He's gonna want
Serious changes happen.
He's gonna need another player. He was upset that the Cavs did not go after Paul George seriously.
Right.
Now there was rumors last year that they were gonna trade Kyrie to Indiana and a few other players and end up getting Paul George, which I think that would have been nice, especially having, you could have flipped them in and out. So I think that he's going to want to add some better players, because it's tough playing with a team like this. And I think he'll stay in Cleveland. However, if he's offered somewhere else, I think he could possibly consider it.
Yeah, I don't think I would be upset if he were to leave. I think, obviously, he's like at the back end of his career, but he's still like great. So I think like him going to another team is like just for him only, because he says himself he's chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So that's what he wants ultimately. And I think if he does stay, they need to get guys that like actually want it. Like
Yeah.
it seems like this team is just like really stagnant, and they're not like trying as hard as I think they should. Like there's times when I'll watch a game and I'll just be like, wow, like they really just let that inside pass lead to a dunk like that easily. Like it just, and then you could see the reaction on the players' faces.
Yeah.
They're obviously they're not too.
Well, you see Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma said, I see the 07 Cavs. which is a valid. I mean, you know, when I saw that, I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, how could you say that?" But in reality, he's really not wrong.
Right.
Because it's a LeBron-led team that's got a bunch of guys that aren't performing anywhere near as well as him.
Right.
You know, it's not like the 2016 Cavs that had Kyrie performing as well as LeBron was, and they're combining for 80 points. And that's just, you don't see that.
All right, so on our next show, I think we're going to continue the playoffs because obviously we're recording this right now. I think games 1 and 2 are done.
Yes,
all the
games 1 and
series.
2.
And so when we come back, we'll probably either sum up some of the final scores of the games, and we'll kind of give you guys a better outlook of what we'll think is going to happen. But other than that, we thank you guys for watching. This has been the first episode of our podcast. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Peace.